Glasses on for me. I'm going to read out the ingredients. All we're doing at this stage is checking that we've definitely got our ingredients. And as always, I put my ingredients on one side of my workbench and I put my equipment on another side of the workbench so that everything is organised and together. And the name of the cooking term that this represents is called a mise en place, which means putting everything into position. Great. So you'll need some beetroot. Got my beetroot here. You need some butter. You'll need some brown sugar. You'll need some chocolate. Where's my chocolate? Someone gave me some really daggy old chocolate the other day. We're going to use that. Perfect for it. You'll need some eggs, some plain flour, some cocoa powder. Then this is where it goes a little bit strange. You'll need some nutmeg. You'll need some cinnamon. And you'll need some walnuts. Now, one of the families that did it the other week in the school holidays, they use macadamias instead of walnuts. Or you can use marshmallows, you can use snakes, you can use M&Ms, depending on what you want to do. So there's all sorts of different fillings you can, that you can use instead of nuts if you're nut-free. So, and last thing is if you want to dust it with some icing sugar, you can do that at the end. I'm just going to wash my hands because something's sticky. Strange. All right. Now, in terms of our equipment, you're going to need, as always, a cutting board and a knife and some measuring spoons and cups. So, cutting board, knife, measuring cups, measuring spoons. You'll need a spatula, a wooden spoon, a whisk, great, I've got a sieve. Okay, so you'll need a little sieve like this or a colander. Great, yep. Charlie, yep. You'll need a bowl. Yeah, good one, Mohammed, yep. You'll need a bowl. You'll need a baking tray to cook your brownie in. Great. You'll need something to melt your butter in. So I'm using my glass jug. And I'm also using, I've got some baking paper. And I've also got, like a food processor, or if you've got a stick blender or something like that, if you've got a NutriBullet, that will work as well, because you'll need to mix up your beetroot. Fantastic. Any questions? Great. All right, fantastic. So the first thing that we're going to do always is do our prep work before we start. So we're going to turn our oven on to 180 degrees. 180 degrees. Then the next thing, which isn't quite in order, but I want us to drain our can of beetroot. So if you've got, has anyone got fresh beetroot, or is everyone using a can of beetroot? Great, fantastic, excellent. All right, so I'm going to open my can of beetroot, and I'm definitely doing it on top of my cutting board. And the reason I'm doing that is because beetroot stains so badly. And really carefully, I'm going to pour my beetroot straight into the sieve, just so that we can get rid of some of that juice. And that will just run down for a little while. And then once you've got your beetroot draining, that's all you need to do. You don't need to do anything with it at the moment because it's quite liquidy. We're just going to let that drain for a little while. I want you to get the pan that you're going to cook your brownies in. Great. Pan, you're going to get the pan. Yep, that's great. Great. Put them in a bowl so that they just drain for the next few minutes while we're doing the next step. And then we're going to grease and line our baking tray. So because I've got a can, I'm holding my can upright.
Oh, Miss, is it all right if I use this one?
Yeah, definitely. I went to find my glass one before, but it's got tiramisu in it from someone else. So hold your can up. Yep, hold your baking dish up as well. Yep, that's good. I know, I do it every single time saying it. That's it, great. If you hold it upright, you'll get more out of the can and you'll get a better coverage. And then we're going to put our baking paper into our baking pan. And as always, I'm pressing the corners in. And I'm doing my little tears so that the baking paper sits nice and flat in our pan. So just take the time to make sure that it's fitting really nicely and nice and flat. Sometimes I'll say to you, it doesn't really matter if the baking paper doesn't fit neatly into the pan, but on this occasion, I want you guys to do the extra bit of work to tear the sides or cut in the sides, yep, to make sure that you've got nice, beautiful, nice straight sides, because if you don't have straight sides, your brownies are going to have that wrinkled effect and you won't want to eat the corners. Great. So once you've got your baking tray done, put that at the side, out of the way. Great. And then we're going to process our beetroot. So just in those first few minutes that you just did, a lot of the liquid will have come out of your baking, out of your beetroot. Oops-a-daisy. Yep, so mine is, oh yeah, she's busy zhuzhing away now. Great. Hayley, if you've got any questions, just ask. Fabulous. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to melt. If you haven't done this already, you're going to, oh, hang on, do you need to? No, you don't. We're going to measure out 175 grams of butter. That's strange. All right, so you've got into your recipe So into your saucepan, you've got 175 grams of butter, and you want it chopped into fairly big chunks so that it will melt quicker. That's the reason we're putting it into big chunks. So you can see that I'm just using my knife to do that. Then you can put your beetroot straight into that saucepan as well. So you'll probably need a spatula to get as much of your beetroot out. While you're waiting, what I want you to do is measure out, but don't add. Measure out brown sugar, 1¼ cups. 1¼ cups of brown sugar. Now, we're not adding it to the pan yet. I know the recipe says to do that, but because I've cooked this quite a few times recently, I don't want you to add it immediately. So we'll measure.
Miss Beth, I'm sorry, I'm just a little behind. Do you put the butter in the thing?
Butter, yep, right into the pan. So we're adding the butter and the beetroot to your saucepan. We're not putting it on the stove quite yet. So the butter and the beetroot. And then we're measuring out 1¼ cups of brown sugar and 200 grams of chocolate. The chocolate you can add to the same jug or bowl that your brown sugar is in. We're not adding that to the saucepan yet.
So do we use all of the brown sugar?
Yeah, you're going to use 1¼ cups, but we're just not adding it quite yet. We're getting every single thing organised before we turn that stove on. Because we don't want to be multi-focused. So I'm just adding my chocolate to my brown sugar. Then we've got 3 eggs that we're going to whisk up into a separate bowl. So there is a little bit of washing up. And as you know, I never put my eggs straight into my bowl. I always crack them into a separate bowl so that I can easily fish out any eggshell, or if the egg is yucky, I can easily rescue it. So 3 eggs, and I'm just quickly whisking. Now, while you guys do that, I'm just going to grab my cooktop. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my butter and my beetroot saucepan. I'll just move it a bit closer so you guys can see that. And I've got my wooden spoon or spatula, and we're going to start melting the butter. Once the butter is melted, then we're going to add our chocolate and our brown sugar. So I'm melting the butter and the beetroot. Well, the beetroot doesn't need to be melted. the butter, and I'm starting to stir it around so that everything melts faster. Just do it over a medium-high heat. We don't want to burn the butter.
Miss, mine's pretty.
You can then add.
Beetroot still supposed to be lumpy, or is it?
If your beetroot's still lumpy, it's not going to get. You're not going to get it any smaller in the cooking. So if it's still lumpy, it's fine. Because I found that it was actually kind of nice to bite into a little chunk last time. So I've just added my brown sugar and my chocolate, and I'm going to constantly stir this around. Perfect, Charlie. Excellent. Now don't go back to your workbench yet. Just keep it there, because the next thing that we're going to do, grab your whisk, and we're going to very slowly, we're going to pour our egg mixture in. Now, I'm just stirring it a little bit. No, sorry, I'm pouring a little bit and stirring a lot, because I don't want my eggs to get cooked. I just want us to stir the mixture. So I'm adding just a little bit at a time, like a tablespoon at a time, and stirring it around.
Miss, I have a question. Do you
Yep.
put your stove back on or no?
No.
No. Okay.
Definitely not. We don't want our eggs to get cooked. So we're doing it really slowly. So the whole point is that you constantly mix a little bit of egg, maybe like a teaspoon at a time. 2 or 3 minutes to do this. Constantly, what you're doing is as you're stirring, you're cooling your mixture down. Oh, it looks even more like crimson colour, doesn't it? So beautiful.
Oh my God, wasn't on.
I was going to say, Zainab, do you know that you're not on mute, darling? Oh, this colour looks incredible. Fantastic. Then what we're going to do is we're going to measure out our flour mixture. So you're going to measure half a cup of plain flour, and I'm just pouring mine straight into my saucepan and whisking. Straight into the saucepan and whisking.
This is half a cup, 2 cups.
Yep. So whisk it. Until it's nice and smooth. Half a cup of flour, you're sprinkling it over the top with one hand, and then you're whisking at the same time. So use a whisk, not a wooden spoon. Get yourself the whisk that you use to do your eggs with. So it's half a cup of plain flour, and then 1/3 of a cup of cocoa powder. Half a cup of flour, and then 1/3 of a cup of cocoa powder. Now, if your cocoa powder is a little lumpy, I want you to sieve it or sift it into your pot. My cocoa powder is a little bit lumpy, so I don't want to bite into my brownie and have a big lump of cocoa. That wouldn't be very nice. So I'm just taking the extra time to put my cocoa through the sieve. Doesn't even take a minute, but the difference between lumpy brownie and nice smooth brownie. And then just give it a whisk. So you've got half a cup of flour and a third of a cup of cocoa. Beautiful. The next thing we're going to do, once you've popped your cocoa in, is you've got 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Oh, yum. 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And this takes our brownie from being your standard brownie to being quite earthy.
Miss Beth, is a 1/4 teaspoon.
Your spoons, honey, I want you to look at the spoons because you know what a 1/4 is. 1/4. 1/4. So you've got a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg and a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And if you love cinnamon, you could even put a little bit more than 1/4 teaspoon in. Yum! Oh, I can smell the beautiful nutmeg. Yum.
Because I don't have nutmeg, I put half a teaspoon of thing.
Good one. Good one. So now you've got your nutmeg, your cinnamon, and the next thing you can do is if you're using walnuts, I'm using macadamias. If you could always use some sultanas if you wanted to use some sultanas, or you could use some marshmallows. And you can just add it to your. So then now we're going to add it to our pan. So I'm just pouring it in. That's so good. And it is quite runny. But keep in mind, because it's got plain flour in it, it doesn't have anything that's going to make it rise up. So you can make it it'll rise a little bit, but it won't rise like a fluffy cake or a muffin. So it's going to, you can take it quite close to the top of your pan. but I want you to make sure that you've pushed it all the way to the edges. And I'm just I'm balancing out my walnuts or macadamias so that I don't have like a whole lot in one section but not much in another section. And I am going to have a little taste of this. Oh, yum. Oh, yum. How unusual. I love it. All right, so then, oops, Daisy, we're going to pop it into the oven for 30 minutes. 30 minutes. So as I always say to you, if the recipe says 30 minutes, put your timer on for 25. Timer on for 25 minutes.